there, and welcome to Grimwit with Dimwits. I'm Blondie.
And I'm T. So this week's story is going to be pretty cool because Blondie and I recently visited an architectural wonder and a historic landmark, the Winchester Mystery House, located in San Jose, California. It sounded like a commercial. I knew there was an intriguing story behind this house, but I had only heard bits and pieces throughout my life, not really knowing any of the bizarre details. And boy, were there a lot of details, right? We loved it.
There was a lot of craziness going on.
Over 12 million people have visited this enchanting mansion, and I've always wanted to go there. So my bestie, aka Blondie, knowing this, surprised me with a lovely trip for my birthday to check this baby off my bucket list.
It was a lot of fun, and it was a surprise. So I couldn't tell her, which is hard because I tell her everything. So I had a whole agenda planned, and that was first on the list.
It definitely was. And it was not one tour, but 2 tours.
You got to do the basic, and then you do the learn more. They call it learn more tour. And we learned all kinds of interesting stuff. But then we went to dinner, and the next morning we did a morning of relaxation.
Yes, we did. But before you get to relaxation, I want to talk about the dinner. So she takes me to this place. Was it called Rock or something?
Rock, R-O-K.
And I love steak. Steak's my favorite thing. And so it's a steakhouse. And we go in there, you order your food, and they bring you out this slab of meat, whatever you ordered, and it's on a lava stone. And it cooks at the table while you eat it. The guy told us for medium rare, which is what I like, you only let it sit for like 10 to 12 seconds. And he was right. We cut it in half. We took half of it away. And then you just cut slices and just leave it on for like 10 seconds and boom, it was cooked.
Cook your bite as needed.
Yeah, so it's hot every single time because the one thing I hate about having steak is that, I'm a slow eater. And by the time I get a third of the way through, it's cold.
Excruciatingly slow.
Yeah.
And this rock, I think, didn't they say it was at 700 degrees? This square little slab?
I don't remember the details.
Gee, I wonder why.
Inside joke. But if you say so.
So that was good. The food was really, really good.
It was excellent. And that coconut lime rice, I think it was, amazing. Yum.
You couldn't get enough of that.
No, I couldn't.
They could have served it to you in a shoe and you would have eaten the whole thing.
And sopped it up. Then we stayed at the Hayes Mansion because my bestie knows I like me some historical places. And that was very cool too. It was beautiful.
Absolutely gorgeous. So the next day we go for our day of relaxation and we go to a massage spa, but it's a Thai, and we get massages and we get body scrubs. It was great. Of course, the Thai massage, they didn't walk on us, which I was disappointed, but they did climb on us and they put their knees in your back and all your whole everything.
I was like, all your whole? I thought you were going to stop right there. I was like, what?
No, like they start at your feet, work up to the back of your legs.
I was like, you got something that I didn't get. Wow.
I paid extra for that. But that wasn't the funny part. The funny part was we're doing the scrubs. We are in the room together.
We always get couples massage because we have to have the experience together.
That's right. And so we're laying there and we're doing the body scrubs. And all of a sudden she asks me, now their English is kind of broken.
You're being very kind.
It's very hard to communicate with them.
Very hard.
So she asks me if I wanted my underarms scrubbed. And I went, oh, no, it's okay. All she heard was, okay. My arm gets whipped up over my head and she just goes to town on my armpit. I'm like...
And I looked over because I heard her talking to you. She was trying to be a little quiet. So naturally I had to be all nosy. And I looked over and I saw her. She just scrubbing that little underarm. I was like, what the heck is going on over there?
I have no idea. But they're nice and smooth and have no scales anymore, apparently.
They definitely got scrubbed. I witnessed the whole thing. Yeah, it was fun. And then... Again, cultural differences, language barrier. I realize we are 2 women in a couple's massage, so maybe assumptions are made. But it's time for us to get the scrub off. And she asks, are we ready for the shower? And I said, yeah, I'll go first. And they look at us like, they go, you go together. And I'm like, oh, no. I said, we are just close. Friends. We are not a couple. And they say, oh, women have the same thing. And I was like, oh, no.
Go together.
No. go together. Anyway, it was a good time. And hold on. And then the clincher was on the way back. We're on the plane. It's like everything is delayed like a half hour. So we're already kind of like, oh, I had things to do. She had things to do. And so we finally get on the plane. They pretty much like rushed the people out, rushed us in. I guess they're trying to make time. So, everything's happening really fast. And then next thing you know, we start moving like we're going to take off. And this plane, been on a lot of planes in my life, so have you. This plane started to fishtail on the tarmac. I remember looking at you and going, oh no, I do not like this.
It went back and forth 3, 4, 5 times just trying to take off.
It did. And, we're like in the middle of the plane and you can see all the people in front of us. All their little heads were like a little ride at Disneyland, like going one way at the same time, going the other way. I was like, oh, no. Nope. Nope. And then we take off and we're still fishtailing. How is that happening?
I have no idea. That was interesting. I looked at you like, but we're off the ground.
Yeah. How is this happening?
How is this happening?
So, and then of course our captain, and I'm going to say that just like that, our captain came on to reassure us, and he sounds like a 12-year-old boy. I was like, this is all bad. I just want to be alive after this.
And the sad part is I thought they sounded like a 12-year-old girl. So
it could have gone either way, but I'm pretty sure it was a boy.
Whatever, they were 12.
By the way, I have the best bestie ever.
Aw.
Touching moment. A tear just fell from my eye.
I know, a little pitter patter in my heart.
But let's dive in and start at the beginning with the very familiar name of Winchester. Let's let the grim begin.
Ooh, let's get into it.
The name Winchester is known worldwide, mainly due to the rifle that Oliver Winchester manufactured in 1866. This particular rifle became known as the gun that won the West because it could shoot multiple rounds without having to reload. Being able to shoot 15 consecutive shots within 10 seconds gave the shooter a huge advantage over the single-shot guns, which required a multi-step reload process up to this point. In 1866, Oliver Winchester, the largest stockholder of the New Haven Arms Company, further modified the Benjamin Tyler Henry rifle to create the Winchester Model 1866. This model featured a spring-loaded loading port and was the first reliable lever-action repeating rifle. Winchester also introduced the Model 1873 in 1873, which used 44 to 40 WCF, Winchester Center Fire, cartridges. 1866, 1873, I'm starting to see a pattern here.
I was thinking the same thing.
Not very creative with the names. With war looming in the air, Winchester saw an opportunity and the potential for great profit with his new repeating rifle. So he pursued government arms contracts to sell his new invention. Winchester was not very ethical when it came to selling his rifles because he had no qualms about selling to both sides of the conflict. He didn't care who purchased his guns as long as they were selling and he was making money. He even went so far as to put ads in the local papers that read, quote, "For Indian, bear, or buffalo hunting, the Winchester rifle is unrivaled," end quote. Wow, talk about dehumanizing people. In this case, his love of money was definitely the root of his evil.
It sounds like he was an equal opportunity tyrant.
As the U.S. government began to force the Native Americans onto reservations, often by cutting off their access to food and water, their hunger pushed them to also start stockpiling the Winchester rifles. The Native Americans called them spirit guns because they just kept on firing and firing. The Winchester rifles were used in many Native American revolts, but thanks to Oliver Winchester, the armies had the same advantage and fired them right back from the other side. Disregarding these battles and the massive amount of bloodshed, the Winchester Company openly enabled violence for profit, and Oliver Winchester went on to make a ridiculous amount of money. On top of all this, the government not only supplied their armies with the repeating rifles, but they also offered these weapons for free of charge to settlers heading out west. I had not heard about them giving these rifles away for free before. That is crazy.
Well, it sounds like they kind of figured that they were on the move. They might as well arm them and help them in the cause.
Right? You need the best guns to steal land. The legend of the Winchester rifles was growing as it became an iconic weapon on the American frontier. It not only helped the white American settlers to claim Native American land as their own, but there was also much more deadly violence toward other white settlers.
That's not good.
Well, everybody got greedy, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
The Winchester rifle was used often by the U.S. government, Native Americans, cowboys, outlaws, and sheriffs. It is said that even President Theodore Roosevelt favored this weapon above all others. The Winchester rifles were also further popularized by Buffalo Bill Cody and Annie Oakley during their traveling Wild West shows. Did you know Annie Oakley was so skilled at shooting that she was actually a sniper?
I had no idea.
I didn't know that either. I knew she was good, but that's very good.
That's next level.
Right. Sitting Bull gave her the nickname that stuck with her throughout her entire career, Little Sure Shot.
Native Americans definitely have a way of naming that is meaningful.
You're right about that. I love how they name each other in the movie Dances with Wolves, because it's just one moment that names you for life, like stands with a fist or smiles a lot.
Or dimwit.
That would definitely be us. So let's talk about Sarah Winchester. She became known as, quote, the unforgettable lady of mystery, end quote. After learning more about her, that name fits her perfectly. Sarah Lockwood Pardee was born in New Haven, Connecticut in 1839. She had 5 sisters and 1 brother, but one of her sisters died in infancy. In the 1850s, the Pardee family just happened to move onto the same street as the Winchester family, and they all became fast friends and were very close. Sarah's father was a carpenter, and she was fascinated by his craftsmanship. Her father really liked the Victorian style and built many homes in Connecticut using that design style. After seeing much of his work, Sarah too became very fond of the Victorian style of architecture. I personally love Victorian. If I could pick a style, that would definitely be it.
I think some of the stuff in your house does have that Victorian tinge to it.
Yeah, I just like things that are, I don't know, a little bit more elegant.
That's why you have me as a friend.
I saw you getting your underarm scrubbed, okay? Don't even try it.
That's what makes me more elegant. I have scrubbed underarms, no more scales.
But it wasn't pretty. Sarah and William Wirt Winchester became friends as children when they were neighbors. It was assumed that William, the only son of the Winchesters, would be heir to his father's successful shirt factory, because at this point, the rifles had not come into play yet.
The first time I heard Griffin, now Griffin was our tour guide, say William Wirt Winchester, www flashed in my head, and all I could think of was the internet.
It's a lot of W's. But William was a rather sickly child, and no one knew for sure if he was healthy enough to be his father's successor. William was actually their middle child of 3, but the other 2 were girls. So even though he was extremely sickly, the girls were never even considered.
Of course not.
Ignorance of the time. William and Sarah began courting during the 1860s, and in the midst of the Civil War that William had been far too ill to fight in, Sarah married her childhood sweetheart, William Wirt Winchester, on September 20th, 1862. Except for him being so fragile, it sounds like they had a sweet little fairy tale romance going on.
It did, but seriously, a man being fragile and he can still run a company?
'Cause he's a man.
Right? He's got the right equipment.
Then in 1863, William's older sister Annie died while in childbirth, and tragically, her infant son also died 19 days later. And Annie had another son who was 2 years old when his mom passed, and he unexpectedly also died during the same time. The triple death devastated the family. You know, as horrible as this sounds to us today, and yes, it is horrible any day, the mortality rate during this time was only 39.4 years. So a lot of people, especially infants, didn't make it very far, and it was so sad.
Well, medicine and the medical field has definitely come a long way since, when was this? 1863?
It definitely has. William and Sarah decided that with all the recent tragedies, they did not want to establish themselves in this area. They planned to only stay temporarily with William's family, but then they ended up staying a bit longer to ease the pain of grief within the family. But then Sarah herself became pregnant in 1865, and in June of 1866, she gave birth to a beautiful baby girl who they named Annie in honor of William's sister who had passed. But sweet little baby Annie Winchester was diagnosed with marasmus and struggled to feed. At only 1 month old, baby Annie Winchester starved to death. I had to look up marasmus, and it's a severe form of protein energy malnutrition that occurs when the body doesn't get enough calories to maintain normal functions. How heartbreaking.
That's awful. And starvation is a horrible way to die.
A horrible way. And here these people have so much. They have everything. And this poor child can't eat.
They can't fix it with money.
Nope, you can't. Following all of these tragedies, the Winchester family decided to design and build a brand new, luxurious home in New Haven, Connecticut. Yeah, I think I need a fresh start too at this point.
Something different.
William and Sarah decided to focus on helping with designing the new home to help them during their grief, so they played a major role in the architecture of this new home. By the time the home was finished, William and Sarah were completely enamored with architecture, design, and construction. Sarah was very passionate about her new interests. So that's how this whole building passion starts. But unfortunately, 1880 to 1881 would bring more heartbreak for Sarah Winchester. In fact, these would be amongst the most difficult years of her life. During this time, she lost her mother, and William lost his father. But the worst was yet to come, because just a few months later, in the spring of 1881, William himself lost his battle with tuberculosis. Sarah was overwhelmed with the loss of her beloved husband. 3 of the closest people in her life suddenly passed away in just 10 short months. Sarah found herself grieving nonstop. She also found herself alone, but now she was extremely wealthy.
I so feel for her, and no matter how much money she was given, you'd trade that in a heartbeat to bring back your loved ones.
I'm sure about that. And being wealthy isn't always what it seems. And along with that came a lot of new responsibilities. So, yeah, poor thing. She had received money from her mother's side of the family and also shares and stocks from Oliver Winchester's business and her husband's 50% inheritance of the Winchester Repeating Arms Company worth approximately $20 million. I looked it up, and just that $20 million from her husband in 1881 is worth $615,821,568.63 today.
Wow.
I know. I figured $20 million was worth a lot, but I was stunned at that figure. And that was from only one source of her inheritance. She had much more.
That'd be a lot of money.
That's a lot of money. In the 1880s, it was quite acceptable for wealthy women to join the American spiritual movement in order for spiritual connections to be performed. According to legend, Sarah met with a medium who informed her that she and her family were being haunted by all the spirits of the people killed by Winchester rifles. The medium convinced Sarah that the family deaths were caused by these unsettled spirits and that she may be next. But if Sarah moved to the West Coast and built these spirits a very grand house, it may appease them and Sarah's life would be spared as long as construction of the house continued. Building this house might even bring Sarah eternal life.
Sounds like some greedy spirits.
That's a lot of rules. It's like, I know you guys are bored, but come on now. Can you imagine how much money these mediums were raking in from these bored and very wealthy housewives? Like they say, don't hate the playa, hate the game.
And I laughed when I saw it was actually named American Spiritual Movement. They had a name,
They were incorporated.
an LLC.
So Sarah decided it was time for her to move out west and start a new life. You know, poor Sarah, she's just trying to stay alive.
Exactly. Although I did hear the Beverly Hillbillies theme in my head. She took her fortune and moved out west.
Right. Hey, I know all the words to that song. Don't get me started.
Yes, let's not get started.
Yeah, I'm going to do you a favor and not go there. California had recently joined the Union and become a state in 1850 and was featured in magazines and brochures as, quote, the place to be. With its beautiful coastal landscape, inexpensive real estate, and darn near perfect weather, it was a great fit for a woman with hordes of money to create a brand new life. Sarah had also invited 2 of her sisters and a few other family members to move to California as well.
So that's when we should have bought our houses, because now they ain't inexpensive anymore.
Can you imagine cheap real estate in California?
No.
That's wild. Upon arriving, Sarah immediately was enchanted with the Santa Clara Valley, so she settled into the area that would eventually become San Jose, California. The Santa Clara Valley was once called the Valley of Heart's Delight because it offered scenic vistas of natural, untouched open space. In 1886, Sarah purchased a simple but very nice, unfinished 8-room, 2-story farmhouse on Los Gatos Road. I said that like a white person. Los Gatos Road. Just 3 miles west of San Jose. That's too much. Over the next 36 years, she created what is known today as the Winchester Mystery House. After purchasing this home, Sarah immediately gathered a crew of well-trained carpenters and started to design her dream house. Sarah named her 160-acre estate Llanada Villa. Her farmland included an abundance of orchards with apricots, plums, and walnut trees. These orchards were another huge source of income for her. You know, she already had more money than she could possibly spend in several lifetimes. So what the heck?
I don't know. I'm seeing it as investment income. Plus, she gave jobs to people to tend her farmland. She was a generous woman.
She was a generous woman. That was one thing they kept saying on the tour, that she was extremely generous. But Sarah's extravagant designs were reflective of Queen Anne Revival architecture, so she spent a fortune on her designs. The estate also featured stone pillars with inscriptions, wrought iron gates, fountains, palm trees, and immaculate hedges. There was construction of some type going on in the house 365 days a year, because that's what the medium had told her to do in order to ward off spirits. But these ghosts supposedly drove her mad, and she spent the rest of her life endlessly building onto the home to make it confusing for the ghosts that she thought were pursuing her. This is why she built stairs to the ceilings, doors to nowhere that dropped many feet below, windows in the floors, and many other structural oddities. I personally loved some of the ceilings and doorways. They were so short just to accommodate her 4'10" frame. She was tiny. For once, I felt like us shorties got a win. There are so few wins, since I could stand straight up for the whole tour.
Yeah, yay you, as I had to duck not to hit my head on random pipes that ran through the attic. But I guess that's why they gave us the construction helmets for part of the tour. You didn't need yours.
I didn't need mine. I walked a little prouder that day.
I remember going up some stairs and ducking at the same time. It was crazy.
Everybody looked like they were going to have a crick in their neck after it was all said and done. Not me.
You're walking all loud and proud.
But just when Sarah had built up this grand estate, in 1906, the Llanada Villa was severely damaged by the San Francisco 7.9 magnitude earthquake. Her beautiful, stunning 7-story tower and most of the chimneys in the house collapsed. Sarah had to have her 7th-story observation tower completely removed. All of the fifth floor and most of the fourth floor rooms were carefully deconstructed, and many of the components, such as doors, windows, and decorative wood pieces, were saved for later use in other parts of the mansion.
Now, speaking of the tower, it was said that before it fell, neighbors claimed they occasionally heard the bell tower ring at midnight and at 2 a.m., which was supposedly the times that spirits arrived and departed.
Oh, yeah, because that's when she held her seances, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Sarah was sad and had the rubble removed and holes patched up, but she left the 40 damaged interior rooms just as they were. She had been trapped in one of the damaged rooms and had to be rescued. She felt that the evil spirits were responsible for the quake and had tried to kill her, so she didn't want to fix the rooms and anger the spirits. I really wish that Sarah had left some type of diary or journal explaining why she was so fearful of these angry spirits. There's nothing to confirm or deny if she ever encountered any.
And the room that she was trapped in, wasn't that the Daisy bedroom, one of her favorite rooms?
I believe so.
Yeah.
That's
And
what Griffin said.
yes, it was. And Griffin also said that, and this is all speculation, so a lot of the stuff that we do say is legend or what people have said over the years. He did say that she thought the spirits were angry because she spent too much money on the front part of the house.
Yeah, that's interesting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I also want to say at this point, we are telling the story the way the story was told to us during our tour. We also looked some things up, of course. But I did notice that when I looked things up, some of it was a little different than what we were told on our tour. So things don't exactly match. We're just kind of saying this is what we were told. I think you can go online and find the numbers might be a little off or that type of thing, but we're just going with what we were told.
And because we were there, we're assuming it's, for the most part, correct.
Right. And it's the most recent information. We literally were just there. So we'll assume it's right. So back to Sarah. Throughout the city, she was known as the crazy lady who never stopped building. Her passion for architecture was confusing to society for a woman like her, and this, unfortunately, would make her the focus of ridicule. Sarah was thought of as a grief-stricken woman who had lost her mind. Her ritualistic nightly seances from midnight to 2 a.m. to contact her dead husband, dead baby, and other friends and family were part of the reason she became known as a misfit who was overly obsessed with the number 13, spider webs, and the dead.
And 13 and spider webs were all over the place.
They were. It was kind of cool, actually. But during Sarah's lifetime, communing with the dead was very common in high society. Mediums were often sought out for people to speak to their loved ones, but because she was utilizing means other than traditional religious practices, people talked poorly about her. These spiritual methods were very new and forward-thinking. Following the Civil War, many family members sought out mediums and were involved in seances because the entire country had been affected by death. People in the social class that Sarah belonged to could afford to pay for something they thought would connect them to their loved ones. Though most people would just use the family parlor for seances, a woman with an abundance of rooms like Sarah could afford to assign a particular room strictly for seances. During the late 19th century, many people connected to spiritualism. Notable figures such as writer Mark Twain, abolitionist Frederick Douglass, and Queen Victoria participated in seances. It was interesting to go into those rooms. I think we went into 2 that were said to be seance rooms. I will say there was a noticeable heaviness in the main seance room, which I believe wasn't even the one she used all the time. She used that little tiny private one all the time, but that big one, it was kind of dark.
It was strange.
Yeah, it was very strange. There were many unflattering stories about the widow in the San Francisco Examiner. They called her, quote, an avowed spiritualist, end quote, and poked fun at her for obsessing over the medium's command to constantly build in order to ward off death. I will agree that why so many rooms? Why not just renovations to existing rooms? I kept thinking this throughout the entire tour.
Yeah, but you can only renovate so many rooms before you run out. So why not build more? Plus, remember Griffin saying that the constant sawing and hammering was a way to keep the evil spirits away?
Yeah, he did say that. But I will disagree with you on the renovation. You can renovate a room 1,000 times. I mean, it could be different every week. It's just like her house was like a house within 10 houses. She just kept building a bigger shell around it. It was very weird.
Parts of it actually almost reminded me of a dollhouse.
Yeah, so imagine a little dollhouse with a medium dollhouse and then a large, you know what I mean? It was like, that's why there were so many weird little crevices and stuff. It was bizarre.
And then it was part for her Barbie car.
The dream house. Sarah was aware of this ridicule, and it is believed that for that reason, she was more comfortable in her mansion and rarely seen outside of her estate. No blueprints were ever found for any part of the mansion. Sarah would just get a wild hair and start to tear away whatever displeased her and add on new structures at will. The mansion was literally just one room next to and on top of another, squished together. It is said that she focused on building many small and intimate rooms because there was no electricity and heating bigger rooms was much more difficult. So she would stay in different parts of the house during different seasons and only maintain heating or cooling methods in those portions of the house. You know, that makes perfect sense to me. When I had a 2-story house, even heating or cooling the upstairs seemed like such a waste because our bedroom was downstairs. Now, granted, if I was a gazillionaire, I might have sprung for that extra AC, but that's not the case.
I didn't even think about heating and cooling the whole house at once. She was ahead of her time and practical.
And it's funny to me that she was practical because she was never going to spend her money in her lifetime.
No.
Sarah claimed that she enjoyed adding on to the house continually. It was calming and gave her something important to do on a daily basis, as a woman was very restricted and not even allowed to have jobs back then. I mean, not that she needed one.
She gave jobs. She didn't do jobs.
Right. Sarah was always trying to incorporate new and innovative things that would make her home more efficient and provide comfort to herself and her staff. She installed the first indoor shower ever recorded, and she personally had come up with different ways for her home to recycle and reuse water. She also did eventually have electricity installed throughout the house. There were even 3 elevators, none of which worked too great, and they were painfully slow, but they were usable for small loads.
Do you remember that shower? It had pipes on either side and they had pinholes in it, and they were lower so they would only wash her body. Like they went up to like 4 feet for Sarah because didn't want to get your hair wet because they had that expensive makeup and hair. They didn't really want to mess it all up.
Yeah, that was gross that they kept their makeup on for days or weeks. I don't remember how long, but it was way too long. And then they rarely washed their hair.
I can't imagine.
And when it was hot and dusty, yuck.
Tell me how you really feel.
She's too rich for that nonsense. She could have bathed every day. I think there was a thing back then where they thought it was bad for you to bathe every day. And I don't remember the reason why, but I think that was also a thing.
I'm sure it was something that a guy made up so we didn't have to take a shower.
Exactly.
Or take a bath or go in a creek or whatever they did.
Some curmudgeon was like, we don't need that. Overrated. Sarah also purchased other homes in Atherton, Los Altos, and Palo Alto. These were homes she used when she visited her family. Sarah's financial resources were astounding. Along with her husband's wealth, upon her mother-in-law's death in 1897, Sarah received 2,000 more shares of the Winchester Repeating Arms Company, which meant she now owned just under 50% of the company's capital stock.
That's a lot of stock.
A lot of stock, so she could buy as many houses as she wanted. Sarah was intelligent and very much involved with her personal business activities, which was unusual at the time for a woman to be in business. From the time she bought the property, Sarah had her gardeners put up a cypress hedge all around her home so that she could maintain her privacy. She was even known to wear a dark veil to hide her face, but this was not so unusual for widows to hide their face in the Victorian era.
I think they said they wore them for like years, the veils.
And if she was wearing a veil, why didn't she just wash her face?
Again with the practical.
I'm just saying, as an esthetician, I'm highly bothered by this.
Clogged pores.
Yeah, exactly. It probably goes beyond that. Although Sarah liked her privacy, she was also known to be quite the philanthropist. She was kind and generous to her estate employees, paying them twice the going rate for tradesmen and her household staff. She donated to local orphanages and other charities, including John Muir's efforts to protect the local redwood trees. So this I thought was really interesting because her entire mansion is made of redwood. So was she saving the trees or protecting more mansion material? On the tour, our guide stated that Sarah didn't even like how redwood looked, so she covered most of the walls with ridiculously expensive wallpapers from all over the world. I think redwood is gorgeous, but hey, you do you, boo.
But some of those wallpapers were absolutely fabulous.
They
And
were.
didn't they say that all of her workers lived on the property? Like single women lived in the house in a section. Single men lived kind of like me on the outskirts of the house, but then she would build houses for the families to live on the property.
Right. If people were married, they could bring their entire family and live on the property.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, who does that? She was amazing.
Amazing to work for.
And you're inviting all these strangers onto your property, your estate. So, I mean, she trusted those people immediately. You know what I mean? It's not what she's being portrayed as. She's obviously very family oriented.
And she's very community oriented, even though they are saying mean things about her.
Yeah. I couldn't have a bunch of kids all over my property. I'd be like, ah. Sarah was also very generous with the neighborhood children and periodically welcomed them to play on the house grounds and even invited them in to play the piano and enjoy ice cream. So if she was such a weirdo, I bet these moms let their kids go over just so they could pop in and snoop Sarah's creepy crib, don't you think?
Yeah, let's go see the crazy lady's house. We'll send our kids first to make sure they make it out okay.
We'll sacrifice the kids so we can see what's going on in there.
Right.
Following the invention of automobiles, Sarah 86'd the carriage and spent a whopping $8,400 for a 1909 French Renault with a battery-operated starter. Very luxurious. But when the car started having problems, Sarah wanted the best mechanic she could find, so she called Fred Larson, an established mechanic from the San Francisco area. She offered Fred a very generous salary to come and work exclusively for her, but he declined the offer. Sarah only wanted the best, so she finally asked him to name his price. He did, and she instantly accepted his outrageous request. Ooh, Sarah's making it rain now.
She wants what she wants, and she can afford it.
Damn straight. I got a visual of her like doing the palm thing, just like, what you want, baby? What you want? I got you.
Little 4'10".
Yeah. She'll have to go up instead of down with her little palms.
Right.
His duties required him to be her personal chauffeur and maintain all of her vehicles, which included a 1917 Pierce Arrow limo and a Buick work truck to be used to maintain the estate. That doesn't sound like enough work for a ridiculous salary. I would have made him address me as fierce and then draw my bath, rub my feet, and feed me bonbons every night. You get your money's worth, girl.
Okay, loony. But the chauffeur part, she didn't go off the state much. So how much did he have to chauffeur her around?
Exactly. So rub my feet, boy.
Looney Tunes.
Hey, you got to earn that money. It is believed that Sarah would never sleep in the same room 2 nights in a row. By switching rooms each night, she thought it would confuse any evil spirits that might be waiting for her. You know, maybe she hoped that if they went looking for her, they'd fall through one of those windows in the floor.
Or go out a door that went outside to nowhere.
But windows in the floor, like legit windows. Not like a nice thick piece of glass, just a plain old window.
I know.
Crazy. According to legend, Sarah would communicate with the spirits nightly to guide her with new building plans for the house to protect against the evil spirits. Sometimes she would just sketch out the new ideas and then give them to her crew of carpenters to go over what they were to build next. There were never any blueprints or building inspectors. It's pretty shocking that building is still standing today.
You know what? It's probably stronger than some of the houses built now.
Right, because they did what needed to be done. Oh, hang on. What, Mommy? Go outside. You don't need me to hold you right now. Go outside. I got him some new bomb snacks from Costco. And she made me laugh today because I came home from Costco and I gave her some new softer snacks that are like chicken jerky. I gave her a snack just because I wanted her to try them and go crazy for them. And seriously, 2 minutes later, she comes and she's tapping me. And that means she did something. So after she ate her snack, she went and she came back and told me, I went to the bathroom. I went in there and there was like the tiniest little turd you ever saw in your whole life. Like she squeezed one
A little
out.
rabbit turd.
She was like, I know if I squeeze one of these out, she'll give me another one. And I laughed so hard. So I think that's what she wants. She wants more of that. Anywho. During the early years of construction, Sarah's suggestions resulted in some bizarre craftsmanship. Columns were installed upside down to deliberately confuse the evil spirits. This unusual practice led to the mansion being known as the house built by the spirits. The foreman, John Hanson, stayed with Sarah for many years and did all that she asked. Sometimes he would build or remodel a room and simply tear it down a week later. Hanson never questioned his boss. There was no budget constraints or deadlines to meet, so her crew just did as she asked. Some rooms were remodeled several times. This caused some peculiar effects, such as stairs leading to the ceiling, doors that opened to walls, chimneys that stopped short of the roof, designer cabinets that had no interior or simply opened up to another space. I really liked all these really weird things. Makes me want to add some weirdness to my house. You know, why not have some fun?
You live there. What more weirdness do you need? I do think it's funny, though. Do you remember you were talking about that cabinet that opened up to an open space? There was the largest cabinet was on that side, and then the smallest cabinet was directly across. It had the two doors, and you opened it up to like a wall, but there was 2 inches worth of space. It was like 2 inches deep worth of space, but it was like half the wall.
Yeah. I said I'd hang my earrings in there.
That's right.
I'd find a use for it.
I'm sure you would. I have no doubt.
Despite the medium predicting that Sarah could have eternal life just by continually building, Sarah died in her sleep from heart failure on September 5th, 1922. She peacefully passed in her favorite bedroom overlooking the central gardens. I really love that room. It was so quaint.
It was adorable. And in that bedroom, one of the caretakers that worked there from 1973 to 1981 reported hearing breathing and footsteps in her room with no one there. I thought that was kind of interesting when we saw that.
Mm-hmm.
And then also you had mentioned 39.4 was their average age, life expectancy.
Mm-hmm.
She was about 83 when she passed away. That was super long for that time. Maybe there was something to the spirits and the continuous building.
Well, they said that her living that long, she outlived everybody in her family that she was close to. Yeah. And so that was why the seances were so important to her, because that was her way of communicating with everybody she had known and loved. She was alone.
Other than having a house full of people, she was alone.
Right. These weren't her family members.
Right.
So, yeah, just sad. You know, like everyone wants to live so long, but here she is, the most wealthy woman in the country, and she's got nobody. So Sarah left a lot of cash to her nieces and nephews, along with considerable trust funds after she died. She also left money to her most loyal and favorite employees. A large donation was gifted to the William Wirt Winchester Clinic of the General Hospital Society of Connecticut for the continued care and treatment of tuberculosis patients and future research. This clinic still exists today as part of the Yale New Haven Hospital. Per Sarah's will, all of her personal property, including all the furnishings in the house, pictures, paintings, jewelry, and papers, were left to her niece, Marion Daisy Merriman Marriott. Her niece kept what she wanted and auctioned off everything else. The mansion was not specifically mentioned in the will. Our guide mentioned that it took 6 trucks, 6 weeks, just to move out all the furnishings from the mansion.
That's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it is.
And I was wondering when I saw Marriott if there's a relation.
I thought the very same thing, and I actually looked it up, and I could not find a connection. I think what I found, I'm trying to remember now, was that her niece's husband or someone, I want to say it was her husband, owned the San Francisco Examiner or the big paper out there at the time. So I didn't find a connection to the hotel.
You would think, because that's not a very common name.
I thought that too. As part of Sarah's estate, the mansion was sold by her trustees to the Union Trust Company of San Francisco. The auction sale of Llanada Villa and the surrounding grounds were finalized on December 15, 1922. The rambling acreage was purchased by a local investor at auction for $135,000 in 1923. Boy, that all happened really quickly.
I was surprised when he said that.
Yeah, I was too. Though Sarah Winchester had no part in the rifles history and the bloodshed that followed, it became her legacy till the day she died, because she attracted so much attention by being smart, extremely wealthy, innovative, independent, and mysterious throughout her life. Let's talk about the house a little bit. The sprawling, beautiful, and Victorian mansion is legendary, and for good reason. It's a marvel in opulent oddness. Not just due to its strange architecture and its labyrinth of hallways, stairs that lead to ceilings, and doors that lead nowhere or to your death, but due to the story surrounding the house and the mysterious owner, Sarah L. Winchester. Some of the steps on her staircase were only 2 inches tall, because that was as high as she could step without causing herself a lot of pain to her body due to her arthritis.
They were really hard to walk on, and the switchbacks that you had to go through so they could fit all these tiny little stairs in the space needed to go up and down. I remember Griffin saying we were going to head up one of the staircases, and he's like, okay, these are pretty treacherous, making it sound like we were going to go up 18 flights of stairs using one step. And they were these tiny little stairs when we get there.
Which can also be treacherous because, our bodies are used to doing a certain movement when we go up the stairs. So yeah, it was weird. It was very off. One of the home's most interesting, little-known architectural oddities is that the original 2-story tank house was located so close to the home's original structure that once Sarah expanded the home toward the west, it ran right into the tank house. So rather than tearing it down, she left it where it was and built the home around it until it eventually became part of the interior. The mansion literally swallowed it. We were lucky enough for them to point out the parts of the tank house. That was pretty cool.
It was cool in the way that the wall was built at angles.
You're right. The way it had to be angled out just slightly so it could accommodate the tank house. Once Sarah finally gave her blessing on a room's completion, that room was decorated to the hilt. The rooms were furnished with the best furniture and decor that money could buy. Sarah had exquisite taste and liked to surround herself with beautiful things. There were very expensive embossed wallpapers, like we talked about before, elaborate brass sconces, chandeliers with delicate crystal, customized stained glass and crystal windows, embossed art tiles, and exotic woods such as rosewood and mahogany. When Sarah passed away in 1922, she still had many very expensive and brand new ornate items stored away for future use. One of the most remarkable features of the house are the parquet floors.
They were gorgeous.
They really were. Sarah had a craftsman who worked for 33 years doing nothing but customizing new floors and tearing up old floors. The wood floors are made of mahogany, rosewood, teak, maple, oak, and white ash. Of course, these floors had beautiful custom intricate patterns all throughout the house. The windows were equally as striking and featured delicate patterns of flowers. Daisies were her favorite, and of course, spider webs, which she loved. She integrated 13 of a particular thing into the patterns whenever possible.
And remember that one window that was the most expensive window in the house? Plus all those other windows that would look from one room to the other?
Yeah. I think that happened when the outer shell started engulfing the inner shell. Now you just have windows on top of windows.
It was strange. I mean, if it's a bedroom and you have a window into your bedroom from another bedroom.
Right. And she probably did that because that's where the light would come from. And it's not like she could move the window somewhere else.
True. Very true.
Her beautiful grand ballroom cost her more than $9,000 to complete just for that room alone. At that time, that was an exorbitant amount of money, considering the entire house could be built for less than $1,000. The grand centerpiece was a silver chandelier for the 12-foot ceilings that came from Germany. A specially designed window catch was patterned after a Winchester rifle trigger and trip hammer. I like stuff like that when they get creative.
Mm-hmm.
Brass corner plates were installed on most of her stairways to make them easier to clean and keep dust off the corners.
I remember walking up one and I was pointing that out to you and I went, oh, these are just really pretty. I didn't realize at the time that they were functional. Now I want those in my house.
I don't have stairs and I still want them. She had a drive-in carriage and eventually a car wash built near her home with 2 ingenious adaptations. Not only could the water be heated, but the hose was attached to a 360-degree rotating pipe in the ceiling, allowing for full access to the car. That was a brand new concept at that time. Sarah's superstitions were represented throughout the house by the number 13. Many of her customized windows have 13 panes. There are 13 bathrooms, with the 13th bathroom having 13 windows. There are also rooms with 13 wall or ceiling panels, stairways with exactly 13 steps, 13 cupolas on the top of the greenhouse, and 13 gas jets on the ballroom chandelier. Sarah added the 13th one. Sarah even has 13 parts to her will, and she signed it, you guessed it, 13 times. Since Sarah had a producing orchard, she wanted to speed up the drying process for the fruit. So after the fruit was picked and boxed in the field, it was previously allowed to dry out in the sun. But Sarah sped up that process by purchasing a special dehydrator, which had a large coal furnace and could dry half a ton of fruit in just 30 hours. Sarah was so successful with her fruit business that she was listed in the early San Jose directories as one of the valley's fruit growers.
I remember going in there. It was a huge room onto itself. It was outside, but it was huge.
Sarah's estate had everything she needed: a plumber's shop, carpenter's workshop. She had her own water and electrical supplies and her own sewer and drainage systems. A 35-foot water tank house was built to replace the smaller one that had been absorbed into the mansion. This larger tank house supported 10,000 gallons of water and was the main water supply for the estate. The elaborate water drainage system is still in use today. It cost $5 million to build this house in 1923. That's roughly $91 million today. The house is 24,000 square feet, has 10,000 windows, 2,000 doors, 160 rooms, 52 skylights, 17 chimneys, 13 bathrooms, 4 kitchens, and 47 stairways and fireplaces. It takes more than 20,000 gallons of paint to cover the entire exterior, and by the time the painters finish, due to weather, the painting process has to start all over again.
Can you imagine how many coats of paint are on that house right now?
A lot. Wild rumors circulated about Sarah. Some people heard that she could walk through solid surfaces, such as walls or unopened doors. There were also stories of how she sometimes spied on her staff and would creep up behind them while they worked. But by all accounts, Sarah was known to be very kind and extremely generous with her staff.
And do you remember the story of the sighting by the manager that she was closing and walking through the house and noticed a figure in one of the kitchens that resembled Sarah? She was dressed in period clothing. And then she went back to the office to inquire who was working dressed in Victorian clothing and was informed that no one was. She ran back to the kitchen to find the figure had vanished.
Yeah. It sounded to me like they were fully convinced that was Sarah.
I would agree with you on that one.
Conflicting stories have arisen regarding Sarah, but they have yet to be proven as truth. One popular story is about President Theodore Roosevelt. One variation of the story claims that the president, being a big fan of the Winchester firearms, was coming to town. Knowing he would pass by Sarah's house, he sent a message saying that he would like to stop in for a visit. When the president personally came to the front door and knocked, nobody answered. One of the gardeners saw him but didn't recognize who he was, so he told him to go around back, just like everybody else. President Roosevelt reportedly was insulted by that and left abruptly. I know. Another account claims that the San Jose Chamber of Commerce tried to arrange a visit with Sarah for the president, but she refused. So I wonder if she did it on purpose and didn't meet with the president, because this lady could buy the moon free and clear. She didn't need to bow down to anybody.
No, she did not. And I thought the one about him not being recognized by the gardener was hysterical. Excuse me, sir, delivery's in the back.
That's right, and make it snappy. Among the many inexplicable and eerie reports regarding the Winchester house are people who have visited and claimed to have temporarily lost their eyesight, feeling icy chills in spots where there was no drafts, and seeing doorknobs turn on their own. Yeah, I'm not down for going blind just to see a house, any house, which I wouldn't be able to see anyway because I'm blind now.
Look at you thinking that through.
Right? Not worth it. While we visited, we were told the story of the wheelbarrow ghost. The spirit of a black-haired man in white overalls and sporting a very tidy mustache was shown to us in a picture in the house. He was one of Sarah's many faithful and long-term employees. He lived on the grounds with his wife and 2 sons and seemed very happy there. From the turn of the century, he has been spotted roaming the house. At times, he was seen walking with a wooden toolbox in hand, repairing the fireplace in the grand ballroom, or pushing a wheelbarrow in the basement near the coal shaft. This area is where the Ghost Adventures team caught him in 2016. Winchester staff members have reported seeing him early in the morning at the bottom of a stairwell, where he would look at them and then turn away and quietly head up the stairs before completely vanishing. One tour guide cleaning the basement all alone was approached by a man wearing white overalls. The man grabbed his arm and said, "You shouldn't be here. It's dangerous down here." The tour guide was startled by the man and he ended up leaving the basement frightened. He later discovered that no one who actually worked at the estate matched the description of the mysterious man. That basement was huge but very cool. I can totally see potential creepiness there, though.
And there was a lot of dark spots. I went around and was taking pictures, hoping to catch something, which, of course, I didn't. So I wanted to continue with some more stories that we were told and that we read about. Tour started in 1923, like you mentioned, and some people wanted to debunk the spirit stories and paranormal activities. And the first one to try this was the famous escape artist Harry Houdini. He visited the mansion in 1924, a year after it was open to the public, and did a midnight tour and seance in Sarah's seance room. Even after trying his best, he wasn't able to expose anything, but after he left, he had more questions than answers. And speaking of the seance room, there's a story that happened when the mansion was closed during COVID. It was March 2020, and everyone was sent home because of the shelter-in-place orders. And a tour manager was alone doing a final walkthrough before leaving and decided that this would be a historic moment for the estate archives and started to record while walking through the house. She randomly stopped in the seance room and said goodbye, locked everything up and left. Later on, she listened to the recording, and after she said goodbye, she heard a door creak and a female voice say, "We're all here." Maybe the spirits were reporting for mansion protection duty. That was super strange.
What is it called when they do it on Facebook to report that you're safe somewhere?
Oh, yeah. Like a tag or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm checking in that I'm safe.
Now, this one was pretty fun. The Winchester house was one of the inspirations for the Disney's Haunted Mansion, which my daughter was actually a lead there. She loved working there. She doesn't work there anymore. She still works at Disney, but not at that particular attraction.
I liked it too. She looked cute in the outfit.
And they also found in the Disney archives, there were notes from Imagineer Ken Anderson that he visited the Winchester house in 1957. He was doing some research on their system for moving guests through the tour. This helped him see the need for the people movers in the Haunted Mansion. Sketches and artwork showed the idea for the Doom Buggy.
I like a Doom Buggy. I like the free green ghost you get at the end.
Sitting on your lap?
Yep.
And remember when we saw the posters of those pictures that were taken showing what could be images?
Yes.
Yeah, and they were like in a window kind of thing. Pictures were taken of the front of the house by a staff member. And while looking through the photos, he noticed something in one of the windows. At first, he thought it was a reflection from the overcast day, and wanting to see exactly what it was, he enlarged the photos and saw the reflection was a translucent figure. I remember the poster, and they had enlarged the figure in the corner so you could see it was translucent.
Yeah, it was pretty convincing.
Which, by the way, we took lots of pictures and we will post on our Facebook. In August 2011, Ghost Adventures, a Travel Channel TV series, visited the mansion and were allowed to participate in the home's very first overnight investigation. The crew set up, and lead investigator Zach Baggins began to communicate with spirits. Zach stated that there was so much spiritual activity that the entire crew was overwhelmed and they had to shut down their investigation in the middle of the night. In nearly a decade, this has never happened. It was the first time the team ever abruptly abandoned a location mid-investigation. Now, that must have been some kind of spiritual activity.
And these are, veteran ghost hunters, right? So that says a lot.
A tour guide claimed that he was cleaning in the hayloft when suddenly he felt like he was being watched. He looked around and then jumped when he saw his own shadow on the wall. He started to laugh at himself, feeling silly for how scared he was, but then he realized that the shadow was still moving, and he was not. He froze, watched the shadow continue to move across the wall and into the stairwell. These are some pretty crazy accounts or legends or stories.
Yeah, that shadow one, that would creep me out. No, thank you.
Wasn't there a scary movie with shadows?
Doesn't every scary movie have shadows?
Probably.
Regarding all the mysteries of this house and Sarah Winchester, determining what is exactly true and what is exactly not will be unlikely. But the question as to why Sarah built her house the way she did, whether it was to accommodate herself or the angry spirits that chased her, may never be resolved. She was fully convinced that her life was affected by the unsettled souls who were victimized by the Winchester rifles. And whether it was some type of guilty conscience or that she was legitimately in touch with the dead and knew this to be true, it definitely affected the path that her life ultimately took. I'm sure it was very difficult for her to open the doors to want to communicate with her dearly departed members of her family and simultaneously close the doors on the angry spirits who she believed meant her harm. Quite a balancing act. But per this theory, Sarah accommodated the spirits of her loved ones by building them a beautiful and welcoming place to visit, including a profusion of light sources, as ghostly guests supposedly don't like shadows. And at the same time, she made various traps and mazes throughout the house to keep the bad ghosts confused and away. In any case, construction at the Winchester house continued for nearly 36 years. She never planned to stop building, so there was no rush or timelines to complete anything. Sarah had all the time in the world and just wanted the construction to continue at a steady pace. With her financial freedom, she could do whatever she wanted, however she wanted. In April 1923, a married couple by the name of John and Mamie Brown leased the Winchester mansion and decided to move their family onto the property. John Brown was an engineer who had worked in the amusement park industry, and he had initially thought the massive estate would be ideal to build a family fun park that would include a wooden roller coaster that he was excited to design. But the couple quickly did away with all of these plans. They instead decided to change direction and open the mansion to the public. They treated this house as a true labor of love, and the mansion drew many visitors who thoroughly enjoyed the unusual structure, beautiful grounds, and the mystery of the mansion, which continues today.
Which we enjoyed greatly.
We really did.
Thank you for including that on your bucket list, because that was a fun overnight thing that we did.
It was. It was a lot of fun.
Well, thanks for sharing our adventure.
Yes, and thanks for making the adventure happen. It was awesome.
That's my job.
That's right. Keep doing it.
We would like to thank everyone for listening. And remember to take care and don't forget to let your grimaginations run wild. Bye.
Bye, everybody. We just want to thank you all for sharing your time with us. And if you'd like to send in your creepy little grim bits, we would love to hear your personal stories, interests, and suggestions. Please email them to grimwitwithdimwits@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at grimwitwithdimwits, Twitter at grimwitwithdimwits, and Facebook, Grimwit with Dimwits. Join us every Monday for new episodes, and feel free to share us with your grim-loving friends.
We would really appreciate if you would take a minute to rate and review. 5-star ratings go a long way and would really help us out. Until then, we would love it if you'd come back next week to delve with us into the strange and unusual things we just can't wrap our skulls around.